For aspiring pilots, learning to fly begins with the right training and guidance. East Coast Aero Club, the largest flight school in New England, helps students take their first steps into the world of aviation. ACMi news correspondent Lydia Chen spoke with the club's senior flight instructor, Jim Henry, about his experience and what the school offers.
Hi, I'm Lydia Chen. Today I'm here with Jim Henry from East Coast Aero Club. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Of course.
And would you like to introduce yourself and tell us about your role at East Coast Aero Club?
Sure. My name is Jim Henry. I'm a senior flight instructor at East Coast Aero Club. I've been teaching there 25 years and help people get licenses anywhere from a basic visual license all the way up to a multi-engine where they can fly something with 2 engines or even to become a flight instructor. I kind of grew up with it because my father was a pilot for United Airlines, but I didn't want to do what he did, so I became an accountant. And I did that for 10 years and absolutely hated it. So I'm like, well, I've got to do something different. And my wife was incredibly supportive. She's like, yeah, you got to try something different. So I said, I think I want to be a pilot. She's like, okay. So I got into it and trained for about a year and became a flight instructor, and I've been teaching ever since. One benefit of being a flight instructor is that flying can be a little bit expensive, and so when you become a flight instructor, you still continue to build hours that the airlines will need to see your experience level, but you don't have to pay for it anymore. The student is now paying for the flight time. Mm-hmm. So it's a great way to kind of build your time and do it in a somewhat affordable way. So that's what initially got me into it, but what keeps me in it, I think, is just the fact of helping people that are so excited about learning something that's so cool like flying. You know, I often tell people if I had to teach people accounting, I don't think I could do that, but teaching them how to fly an airplane is easy. You know, it's one of those things that's just so rewarding.
For people who may not familiar with East Coast Aero Club, would you like to introduce this company?
East Coast is a club that's been around for more than 40 years now. It started off just as a single airplane club, and the owner was in the Air National Guard in New York most of the time during the week, and he would come here on the weekends and rent the plane out, and he was a mechanic as well, so he could do some of the repairs and stuff like that. But over 40 years it's grown, and now we have another person in charge of all the maintenance, and you know, Mark has grown this from a small club to a place that has locations in Nashua and Norwood and Bedford now. So it's become a big thing.
It's the largest in the New England?
It is. And when they started off, they never envisioned that, but that's kind of what it's turned into. And we have a variety of planes too. We have over 40 at this point. So wow. From a flight instructor standpoint, some flight schools only have 1 or 2 planes, so you're in the same type of plane all day. But East Coast has probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 different types of planes. So we get a lot of variety of different things that we get to fly.
So who typically comes here for the training?
That's an interesting question, because I used to have a Christmas party every year, and I would invite my students and their spouses. Mm-hmm. And my wife would say, that is the most eclectic group of people, just because there's people from so many different backgrounds. You have people that are teenagers in high school that are learning, and then you have people that are 70 years old that have always wanted to learn to fly, and everything in between. And you know, I've had people who are musical, I've had people who are engineers, I've had people who own their own businesses. And you know, it's just, I can't say that it's all this or all that, but it's a wide range of people.
So is there an age limit of learning?
No, and
oh, wow.
You know, I think if you owned your own plane, there is some kind of limitation eventually that insurance becomes an issue.
Yeah, so it's better than learning how to drive a car.
Yeah.
So for someone who is completely new to flying, how do you usually get started, and what does the process of earning a pilot certificate look like?
When somebody starts, we typically take them on an intro flight, and an instructor will take them up and they'll go flying, and it's typically about an hour long. And the instructor will do the takeoff and the landing, but up at altitude will allow the person to try the controls and experience the excitement and the joy of being at the controls and making it do what you want it to do. So mostly, I think when people do that, they're hooked. Yeah. But I would say being in a small plane is a little bit like being in a canoe. You feel a little bit more of the waves, you know, like you would in a canoe. In a small plane, you feel more of the air moving around you and stuff like that. So for some people, it takes a little bit of time to get used to the bumps that you feel, because you feel more in a small plane than you would in a big plane. But everybody kind of gets used to it.
How long is the process of getting a certificate?
Part of it depends on how often you go and how lucky you get with the weather. Because when we're first training, we're training people to fly in good weather. So if the clouds come down low or if we have storms and stuff, we're not going to go flying. What we're trying to do is manage the risk and make sure that we keep the odds in the students' favor and that they have a positive experience and don't scare themselves or don't scare their instructors.
Right.
But they would start with an intro flight, and then we go out and we do some maneuvers, and then we spend a lot of time teaching them how to land an airplane, because it's I thought I was going to be able to learn it in a lesson or two, but it never works out that way. It takes a little bit more, but eventually they get that down, and then we work on some procedures as far as getting them to fly to another airport and planning it out to make sure how much time it's going to take and how much fuel it will take to make sure you have enough and that the weather's going to be okay, and what all the conditions are at the other airport. For example, how long is the runway, and how wide is it? What is the weather there? So all those things I'll have to factor into it. And then when they finish that phase, we get them to fly solo for their to go plan on their trips. And after that, then we come back and we start getting them ready for a check ride. So they have to do a certain number of maneuvers, and they have to do them within a certain standard. And we get them all set up for that, and then they go and take a check ride with an examiner.
So do they need to finish the paperwork?
There is a paperwork a little bit with it. There's a written test that they have to take to make sure that they have a base set of knowledge for flying. And then there's an application that they fill online, and it tells them how many hours that they have, because we have a requirement that they have to have a certain amount of experience before they can go for their check ride. The minimum amount of hours that they need is 40, but it's been that way for probably 50 or 60 years. They haven't changed that 40, but they keep saying we have to train more and more things. So nowadays, I would say more like 60 or 70 hours to get your certificate.
What is the biggest challenge that people have if they want to get a certificate?
Every student is different. So for some people it comes easily. For some people it's, I would say the interesting thing about flying is that there's different parts to it. There's communication on the headset. So there's that audio part of it, that there's also a feel to it, because you have to learn to adjust when the plane is making, affected by the wind and that type of thing. And then there's also studying the books. So some people don't like to study the books. Some people just like to be on the airplane, or, it could be the other way around. But it's a lot of different types of learning that comes into play when you learn to fly an airplane.
When we are on the airplane, sometimes it will have the turbulence.
Yes.
So if we're training, we'll also experience that or not?
Yes. So I would say we try to regulate that so that it's not terrible turbulence. We kind of have a sense of when the weather's going to be really bad. But what we want to do is we want to get the student comfortable being just a little bit out of what they feel comfortable with when they're with an instructor. Because they may go up when the forecast is for the weather to be perfect, right? And of course, sometimes the weather forecasters are not correct. And we just want to make them feel safe that, hey, I've been in this situation before. I can, get a landing and I'll park it. But and then when the weather's better, I'll go up again. But we don't want to be scared that if the weather turns bad that they can't handle it. We want to make sure they're comfortable with what they can do. Safety is definitely our number one thing. We factor safety into everything from the maintenance on the aircraft to the decision making to people evaluating themselves to see if they're good to go. To make sure that they're not on medications that they don't belong on or that would affect them flying.
How would you describe the aviation career nowadays?
I would say that there's lots of different roles or areas that people can go into. Two of the more common are to go to the airlines and become a pilot for the airlines. Another thing that people do is they'll go fly private jets, either for a corporation that is doing charters for people or for people who own their own personal jets. So a lot of our flight instructors have gone on to do those types of things. I've had the benefit of doing this for a long time, so I've had a lot of the people I've trained go to the airlines, and it's just really rewarding to see them cash in on their dreams, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would you think is the difference between like flying a private jet or a national airline?
I think the difference is that the people who are more with the private jets and that type of thing have more of a variety of places they're going to, whereas the airlines are going to the same cities all the time. So there's more repetition with the airlines. I think occasionally that the airlines could have contracts so that people are, it may be more financially rewarding to go to the airlines at times. But some people like the experience of going to different places and landing at different airports and the variety that they get with that.
Yeah, and also I'm curious, is the training also similar as the helicopter or not?
I would say the helicopter training I have not done, so I'm not an expert in that. But there's probably not as many jobs available in the helicopter arena as there is in the airplane. Area or that field. We used to have helicopter training at East Coast, but those helicopters were owned by somebody who was associated with the club, and they moved to Florida, so they took their helicopters with them. So that once they left, then there was no more helicopters, so we don't do the training anymore for the helicopters.
Is there any other thing you want to add about East Coast Aero Club?
The only thing I would say about East Coast is that it's just a nice community. There's a lot of people the flight instructors all talk to each other. If they have a student that they have a challenge with, they're like, oh, do you have any ideas for that? Or can you fly with my student, to help out? And we all, talk to each other. But the students come and they like being there, and it's a fun environment, and, we have a good time with it. Obviously, safety is the first thing, but I would say fun is probably the second part of it.
Yeah.
And then hard work is the third part of it. So if people work hard and they have, a good time with it, they're going to keep coming back. And so it's just a very, very fun place to work.
Thank you so much for James visiting, and thank you so much for East Coast Aero Club. And I'm here as ACMi, and thank you for the crew. My name is Lydia Chen, and thank you so much for watching.
East Coast Aero Club continues to support both hobbyists and future professional pilots with the focus on safety, confidence, and professional hands-on instruction that gives students a place to begin their journey toward the sky.